To call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item we have assignment for requests for council action. We have budget amendments, or 2092 budget amendments, 2093 advance requests, mechanics fund, 2094 transfer request, Board of Building Standards, 2095 expenditure, server refresh, municipal court, 2096 accepting grant, Ohio Body Armor Program Police Department, 2097 fiscal year 20 CHIP grant program application, 2098 increase PO 2731 Zashin and Rich Law Department, 2099 expenditure over 15,000 CXT Inc. Parks Department, 2100 discuss comprehensive plan update RFPs received, 2101 then and now Municipal Court Pioneer Technology Group, 2102 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program Police Department, 2103 agreement with Euthenix Inc. Gates Mills Bridge Replacement, 2104 amend salaries and benefit code 3103 and 3116 pay scales and healthcare, 2105 various amendments to salaries and benefits code pertaining to union agreements, 2106 bid acceptance Lindenwood Lake Dam improvements, 2107 purchase of one 2020 F-Series SD Ford F-350 with utility service body water department, and 2108 exemptions to zoning code pertaining to outdoor dining during the COVID-19. We have, the next one is 2092 budget amendments. We have 8596 repay advances to cover shortfalls. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. President. There are four here. The first one is repaying in advance from the General Purpose Capital Fund to the Fire Capital Fund. Second one is repaying in advance from the General Purpose Capital Fund to the Water Capital Fund. The third one is a new advance into the Mechanics Fund because our current rate is not enough to cover the operations there. We're going to have to increase the rate, but we need an advance to get us through until that. And then finally, there's a transfer. And the reason for this transfer is when people pay for a building permit, part of it goes to this Board of Building Standards Fund and part of it goes to the General Fund. We had some refunded permits that we refunded out of Board of Building Standards that should have been refunded. We didn't get the General Fund portion, so we got to reimburse the Board of Building Standards Fund because it's negative now.
Now, with respect to the water fund of 546, is that 550 of payment back from the water tower?
Yep.
And if we do that, how does that affect the water fund so we don't have to raise rates?
The Water Capital Fund has sufficient cash to pay this now.
Is there any other projects in the water capital fund that if we pay this, then we're going to be looking like we want to take it back?
Well, if not that are currently pending, we have some debt that's falling off in the water funds in the next couple of years for projects like that. And the other thing is ultimately, I mean, if we needed to do a project, we could do this again.
Is this the final payment? Because I thought we did like
This is the final payment. This is to pay it off.
Okay, what does council think about that? That's what, well, you weren't around, but the question was that, remember we did this a while back. This has been probably about how many years? It's got to be 8 years.
Yeah.
And we hold it back just because we were concerned about if we took the money out of the account to pay it, we might have a shortfall in the account. We didn't want to raise rates. We wanted to see how everything was going to go. So Nino, is everything going to be fine with this account? Because well, we can't discuss it if we approve it tonight.
Well, but John, you can always do an advance from general purpose to water. You can't do one from water to general purpose. So, I mean, we can repay it, and if you decide later we want to do that, we want the money back in water, we can just do another advance.
Did the new water budgets that we got and the revenue estimates, did they take into account that this money's coming out? No, because it's not in the budget but it was, well, yes, because it was budgeted to be paid off in 2020 anyway. Right. Thoughts?
Well, why don't we do it tonight and then talk about it Wednesday?
Because we can take it back.
Yep.
If it's a problem.
Right.
Any questions down there?
Move to approve the budget amendments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have number 3, 2093 fund advance from Mechanics Fund. Keith?
Since you already approved the appropriation for this, it's pretty redundant
Right.
to talk about it at this point, but this is the advance.
Move to approve.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2094 fund transfer for Board of Building Standards Fund.
Same thing. Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2095 expenditure for technology engineering group for the municipal court. Who's handling this one in front of the muni court?
Thank you, Mr. President. Currently, we're asking to spend about $67,850 through TEG to improve or change our servers and also have a backup for replace Barracuda, which is going to be obsolete as of June, and replace it with a Cronus.
Is this, what fund is this? Is this coming out of the, you got the emergency clause requested. It's coming out of the general fund. Is there any, I guess the 67,000, was this budgeted for? I can't recall in the budget if it was.
We used our carryover.
Oh, you did?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And it's going to come out of tools and minor equipment.
Just a question, because I know we kind of went through this here at City Hall with Sergeant Zaremba updating all these servers and stuff. And I don't know if they have to be compatible servers or the same quality servers or anything like we have over here, and how you guys went about getting them, or did you talk to Sergeant Zaremba at all about it?
Absolutely. And we also have Harvey from TEG here.
Okay.
And then I have John with my IT.
Okay.
Harvey talks to Darren.
Okay.
Darren reviewed it. We thought this was the best investment for our money, and it cost the least amount.
Now, this handles all the judge portion of the court, or is it the clerk of courts that some of the servers, I know the clerk of court had new software, but does this,
This is software for the complete court.
the complete court?
Complete court, yes.
Okay. And it's compatible with the program that, oh, there it is. I see heads shaking back there. All right, well, I know you checked all the homework out. Any questions for anybody? Paul, you're the computer guy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I had a couple of email exchanges and a brief conversation with Jonathan. This will go in, work nicely with the current structure that we have with the schools and our DR backup plan, along with this backing up the courts, as well as paving the way for the city to move forward with a similar type of strategy when we have to do our refresh in the next 2.5 years or so. I feel comfortable, especially with the part, but even though we are going to the cloud and reducing costs, we will be able to keep a local copy of a backup here should the internet go away. We'll be able to restore our data here. So I believe it's a good strategy, and I feel comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including an emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 2096, accept a grant of Ohio Body Armor Program for the Police Department. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one of our body armor grants. The total project is $16,560. Our award will be $12,420. We do have a 25% match, which is $4,140. We're requesting permission for you to authorize our acceptance for that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2097 fiscal year 20 CHIP grant application. Jonathan, is Jonathan here? Who's here?
Yes.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just, we've been doing the CHIP program through the state of Ohio for decades, and this is just to do another round for program year 20. We're going to do it in partnership with the city of Brunswick, as we've been doing the last couple cycles. City of Medina is the grantee, so we are the fiscal agent for the project manager for the grant. This is very similar to the last couple rounds that we've done with the partnership. It allows the total amount to be more money that can be allocated into each individual municipality. And there's the program, the proposed projects are on the bottom of the RCA. So the emergency clause is requested so that we can have it in time to apply, which this is a later date for application is June 24th, 2020. Usually it's in May, but because of the pandemic, they extended the application timelines. We haven't been told whether there's going to be funding shortages for these programs, so we're just going to keep moving forward with the amount request and see how it shakes out from there. But we would appreciate the moving this on so we can get the application in. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including the emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. 2098, increase PO 2731, Zashin and Rich Law Department. Mr. Huber.
This is for the Zassin and Rich law firm that helped us with the union negotiations and the fact-finding procedure that resulted in the union contracts that we signed just a short time ago.
Thank you. Any further question or comment?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2099, expenditure over 15,000 to CXT Incorporated for the Parks Department. Jansen?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for the purchase and installation of a precast single vault restroom that'll be handicap accessible at Sam Macy Park. This project was collaboratively funded through donations from the Miracle League of Northeast Ohio, and then also a donation from the Willard Stevenson Foundation. It's been a long time coming. Currently, there's a handicap accessible porta-john that's there placed seasonally. So with all the improvements that the Miracle League and variety of other nonprofit organizations and foundations have put into this park, I think it's much overdue. This is going to be purchased through the Sourcewell contract, and it is a new vendor. And I'm also asking for authorization for the mayor to accept the quote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2100, discussion of the comprehensive plan update, RFPs received. Mr. Mendel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As we all remember, earlier this year we had put out an RFP, request for proposals, for a new comprehensive plan for the city of Medina. We had lots of discussions on it over a number of meetings. We had received 5 proposals. The due date was March 16th, right at the beginning of the restrictions. So I was looking at them, and in light of other items that we've been talking about in terms of finance and revenue for the city of Medina, the 5 that we had, it ranges of $78,000 to $149,000 for a comprehensive plan. So for the last 6 weeks, the selection process has been stalled just to kind of see what the uncertainty of the last 6 weeks. But to give the consultants that provided proposals, a somewhat of a appropriate process, kind of need this time to kind of decide what direction will you want to continue moving forward with. So, kind of have the 3 options that are in the RCA. Just continue moving forward as we had planned earlier this year, and then we will start the selection process for the consultants that were submitted. We could cancel the project due to in order to have the funds maybe focused in another priority area in the community. Could also conduct basically a similar type project in-house, which would have reduced costs, but there would still be some costs, but it likely wouldn't be to the extent that we have received in these requests, in these proposals. So, as I said, the providing direction to the consultants is necessary at this time, so that everybody can understand kind of where the dollars are going to potentially be allocated and accordingly. So.
Well, thank you.
Just a kind of a discussion item. Thank you.
Can you remind us, and I don't recall, I thought it was like 60,000. How much did we save up for this already? Because I think we saved some money in the carry forward to pay for the plans.
It's been generating about 50 to 70 is what could be done in the planning and zoning carry forward. And we did have $20,000 through our last CDBG allocation grant through the state of Ohio to help offset some of the costs as well.
Okay. Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Well, you were spearheading some kind of committee here.
Thank you. Well, it came out of special legislation, right?
Yep.
Right. And following that, I worked with some other people, and I put together, which I mentioned, I think a couple meetings ago, I put together an outline of how I felt we could put together a more community, a group to work on with us on this that was a broader community group. I thought more representative maybe than what we had in the past, and that idea was particularly based on that we had the other comprehensive plan for about 15 years, and it was appeared to be rarely referred to or used. And so my sense was if we had a broader community involvement, we would be able to develop a plan that would be useful as well as a plan that would be we would use, and it would speak to the issues as we see them coming out in the next decade. My sense now, and because I've been a proponent of doing this because we're really years behind in getting a new plan, but my sense now with the virus and the changes that we have, my preference would be, I think not unlike some other things. I think non-essential expenditures, that things that we would probably be wise to put off for, maybe review in 3 months, see where we are in 3 months or in 4 months, and how we go forward. My preference would be that we contract it as we have in the past. We choose a company to work with, not do it in-house, incorporate it with the group that I intended to share with you so that I could get your input. But I think, considering it's been 15 years, I think, since we did a new plan. It would be wise, I think, for us to wait 3 or 4 months and take a look at it again and see if how things play out when businesses reopen, how the economy is, because we know we're going to take a hit, down the road, and whether it's 60, 70,000 or 140 is a lot of money, and the uncertainty, I think, we need to. I would prefer that we just let the people know that the companies know that we are going to go forward with it, basically in the same manner we had proposed, but we would wait. We'll wait a while before we make a decision.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
I agree with Bill 100%. Financially, I think it's prudent on our part to give it a few months to see where we're at financially before, because I know we've already talked about making cuts in the budget. So, and is that going to be a problem, Jonathan, as far as
just for clarity would be, Mr. Lamb, are you saying we hire a consultant, but then say, well, we're not going to start paying you until December? Or do we just say, you know what, thanks for your proposals, guys. We're not doing it for now, but we can restart the process because we already have it ready to go. We can restart it in October and ask for proposals again. I don't know if any consultants would be like, okay, well, we got it on contract, but we're not going to start doing anything for several months. Or do we want to just say, okay, we're going to thank you for your proposals. We're going to cancel the project for now, with likely going back to RFPs again later this year. So I'm just trying to figure out what that.
I think it would be the latter. We were putting it on hold. We're not going to choose anybody now. We're not going to accept a contract. We'll go back to it in, whenever we think it's, we can say tonight, we're going to look at it in 4 months, or we're going to look at it, as you said, maybe in October. We'll review it and see how we are financially. And thanks for the word prudent. I kept saying wise, and I was trying to prudent was the word I was trying to think of. So thanks again, Denny. Yeah, but that's what I think. We'll put it on hold.
I kind of agree with your statement, put it on hold, but really the issue is not 2020. The issue is 2021. Exactly. So we could look at it in October, but my sense is really not going to be decided until mid next year, because that's when we're going to know really how we're going to be affected by the income tax coming in next April.
I've actually been approached by a couple more individual outfits that are interested in being involved in this. So if we hold off actually accepting the proposal now, we might get a few more proposals if we wait. And so seems sensible to me also.
Right, and you don't know, when you bid them out, maybe they'll come in a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah.
Because I think if we're doing this, I would imagine there's many other cities that are doing the same thing. So I think that would be Mrs. Hazeltine?
We are not under any deadline per se, correct, to update our comprehensive plan?
We are not.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Yeah, obviously, but
Wait, Jonathan, you had something else?
thought I
Oh, just
double-checked.
so I'm clear, do we just hold on this process, or I send a letter to all these guys saying thank you, but it's stopped now. We'll restart the whole process again.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right.
Mayor Hamwell?
Jonathan, what's the deadline for the CDBG grants?
The $20,000 that's in there, we're halfway through that grant cycle. I believe it's into 21 that the dollars would be. It may just be something that it's not money that we haven't spent, and if there's money in there, I can work. Sandy and I can work with the state to see if we can reallocate the program design to put that $20,000 into something else that can help. That the typical allocation goes to.
I guess my question was more, by delaying it, are we going to lose the ability to use the 20,000? So it sounds like if we postpone it to the fall, we're in good shape, possibly even into the spring, as long as we get it ramped up to have that 20,000 set aside for this. Correct?
Yes, I have to make sure I got those dates correct, but we can certainly, something that we can incorporate into another CDBG allocation grant round. I'll square that away for everybody. Those dollars that were allocated in the grant, in the allocation grant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Simpson?
And Jonathan, I want to thank you for your hard work on this, and I'm sure the
Thank you.
consultants will totally understand with the situation going on with the funding from the states and what are how much we're going to take a hit. So I'm sure you'll thank them and tell them nothing. It's not that their proposals were out of line. It's just we're just unsure about our own finances right now to move forward with it. But thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll just hold off on that. Number 11 is 2101, then and now for the Municipal Court Pioneer Technology Group. Who's on this one? Harvey, you?
It's
Mr.
then
Durham.
and now.
Is that you?
They've already, the emergency clause is requested because the money's already been spent and we want the authorization to pay the vendor.
What was it for, I guess is the big question.
It's not my request.
I mean, how'd the money get spent and we don't know it? Is it something, it has to evidently deal with some kind of computer technology situation.
I'm not exactly sure what benchmark services are. Do you know?
Benchmark Services is a case management company that Nancy had started, Nancy Abbott had. Right now, there's still some kinks that we're working out, and so she's paying them a little bit instead of, to make sure that they will continue to work with those challenges that we've addressed. She's paying a little bit at a time. I spoke with Nancy earlier. She didn't really give me a whole lot of information on the proposal that was sent up. Or
Well, have
I
we-
would have known.
Not helpful.
How do we vote on this?
Well, I don't know. I guess can we wait or?
We already paid it. Keith already paid it.
Well, if we don't do it,
Well, we haven't written the check.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The invoice that's attached to this is marked past due because they've already provided whatever this service is, but
well, my guess
without
is the service deals with her new program she has over there, and it must be the ongoing maintenance and training processes related to it. That's what I would assume. It's not something different than a new clerk management program, correct? Or am I missing something?
I believe this is the initial bill for starting up the case management. And there's some discrepancies on what they were supposed to provide and what they're providing at the same time. So I think that's why the bill is still past due, is because they haven't completed their,
Well, if they haven't completed it yet, why would we pay them still?
I wish I knew what.
Maybe we can wait, because what's the worst thing they could do? Sue us, right? Greg Huber likes
Keith,
that.
have you paid the bill?
no.
Okay.
They did the work, though.
They did the work.
Right. What would everybody like to do?
I'd wait. I'd hold it.
Wait, yeah. This whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense.
Kathy. A lot of money. Kathy's trying to get you to.
Yeah.
What was that, Kathy? I didn't hear you.
She's paid 10,000.
Did you notice on the invoice, she's authorizing only $10,000?
Yeah, it says that she completed $10,000 worth of the work out of the $56,000 that's due and owing. And this was back, let's see when this was issued. Invoice was March 31st, 2019.
But a purchase order for this service was recreated on 1/24/20.
That's kind of interesting. That was
So
over a year ago.
I was going to say though, Keith, was there a purchase order that got canceled out at the end of the year?
That's what it says, and I mean that would be normal.
One last year, and then they hadn't paid yet.
What if they didn't cancel it, then we were paying it twice?
Well, it cancels out, and then she's got to recreate one.
So it was recreated in January. But it was over a year
But we don't
old.
know, we're not for sure she canceled last year's out.
Yeah, it's not a blanket. But if the mention of a purchase order in January, if there was a purchase order, we wouldn't be here.
That's true, because it would carry over,
Because
wouldn't it?
that's the authorization we would need. I mean, we're looking for the authorization to create the purchase order. So, and Nancy's asking for $10,000. It's a $57,000 invoice. Nancy's asking to pay $10,000 because she's apparently, from what Cindy says, not convinced that they've done all the work they're supposed to do yet.
Well, since last March.
But they've done some work.
Well, they've completed it. There are some challenges there, some challenges there that they're trying to negotiate through. I think the idea is, listen, we have this bill, you need to complete what you're supposed to before I'm going to pay the full amount, is what she's.
Okay, they've installed the software, they've done the training, we have whatever hardware we need, it's not working as the way it was promised. Okay, all right.
My recommendation on this would be to table this for now and have Nancy explain what the issues are that she's having, because it's highly unusual to have an invoice for $56,000 and only pay 10.
Yes.
If you have substantial completion of a work, it's substantially completed, and you as a council have no idea as where in the percentage of completion we're at, what the issue is. So before you approve it, I would recommend that you get an explanation as to what the issues are, what the problems are. I definitely have an attitude about that program over there. You probably don't want to hear it, but there have been some issues with this, and you probably ought to be apprised.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Do you have a follow-up on that? Okay, does everybody agree? Let's just get some more information and then we can deal with it. I mean, it's been a year. I don't know if another couple of weeks would matter. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right. 2102, and Mr. Durham, are you going to call Nancy up and let her know?
Oh, okay. You're dumping that on me, huh?
Well, it is money.
Well,
You are the finance director.
All right.
2102, Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program, Police Department. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our federal vest reimbursement program. Total project cost is $16,278. Our award would be $8,139. That's with a 50% match on that program.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2103, agreement with Euthenetics, Inc., Gates Mills Bridge Replacement. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. President. We are recommending Euthenix for this work. We did this is for our Gates Mills project, the replacement of the bridge there. We do have an Ohio Public Works Commission grant in the amount of $485,120 towards this project. We did a qualification-based selection process and determined that Euthenix was the most qualified for this work.
So our local share is 27% of that, as you have here, $183,000.
That's correct.
And the estimated cost is $91,374.
For Euthenix.
Right. Anybody have any questions?
That's just for the engineering part of it.
The 91,000 is correct. Engineering, surveying, geotechnical investigation.
And it's coming out of the 108 account.
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah,
is
it's a bridge.
which is the income tax account. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2104 amends sections 3103, 3116 salaries and benefits code, pay scales, and health care. Mayor Hamel?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a request of the council to pass on to the non-union employees the same rate increases that were awarded to the Teamsters and the three OPBA unions through the collective bargaining process. So it's a 2.5% raise for this year, 2.5% for 2021 year, and 2.75 for 2022. And this request also has those not taking part in the wellness program raising their contribution from 16% to 20% of the health care monthly premium, and also the full-time employees that are taking part in the wellness program, raising their contribution from 12% to 13%. It also gives the city the ability, just like the union contracts, that if our health care increases in either 2021 or 2022 by more than 1%, that we will go from a 13% contribution to a 14% contribution for those taking part in wellness.
Thank you. And people may be wondering, well, how are we going to give people raises when we're cutting the budgets 10%? And I guess the important thing to remember here is people are the most important component of the services that are provided. The 10% is going to come from other projects that are going to happen throughout the community, and we have carry forward. So we're hopeful that next year, when we feel the revenue shortages that are bound to occur in 2021, we don't want to have the individuals that are providing those services take the brunt of the suffering. So we want to make sure that we take care of the people and then go through the budgets and make sure that other areas that are not necessary, for example, the comprehensive plan, the money's not spent on that, so that we can still have people working and providing for their families. I think hopefully we're finding out that many communities around the state are struggling, and hopefully, what we have done, we will hopefully not have to feel that much of a pain related to all the layoffs and furloughs that are going to happen in many communities throughout Ohio. So I think this is a good thing to do for the rest of the members of and employees of the city, since all the unions have the same benefit. We want to have the same benefit throughout the city. Any other questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including the emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 15 is 2105, amend various sections of the Salaries and Benefit Code pertaining to the union agreements. Now, this is the same thing, Mayor, correct? This is to change all the Salaries and Benefit Code related to the different classifications of officers and shift differentials?
Yeah, shift differential. Some of it is cleanup as far as the calculations for vacation time. Under the sick leave, we use the terms that are in the Teamsters contract as far as the definition of immediate family, because it was not identified in the existing salary and benefits code. A lot of it was just cleanup. I can go through them all if you want, but it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it's pretty. I agree with you. Anybody have any questions for the mayor or anybody?
Move to approve.
An emergency clause is requested on this also, Mayor?
Yes.
With the emergency clause.
My second includes emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2106, bid acceptance from Lindenwood Lake Dam improvements. Mr. Patton.
Thank you. Several weeks ago, Council passed Ordinance 5720 authorizing us to bid the Lindenwood Lake Dam Improvement Project. Typically, when we receive bids, we would just go to Board of Control for award. But while discussing that at Finance Committee, we were asked to bring the bids back before we awarded it for further discussion, primarily because the uniqueness of this funding source is Council's discussion and I think intention to assess the property owners for the cost of this project. To give you some details, our project estimate was a little over $238,000. The actual low bid came in about a little under $198,000, so it was well below our estimate. to a contractor we're very confident in. We feel good about the bid and would like to move forward with it. Speaking to Mr. Huber, a couple things he thinks council needs to weigh in on, and perhaps in the form of an ordinance. We have to, the mechanism for us to assess the project to follow ORC is I will have to write a letter, once council authorizes it, to the property owners, giving them a certain amount of time to do the repair themselves. We're going to suggest 30 days because we believe all the property owners are on board. Once that 30 days is up, we can then start our project. The other thing is about the assessment. The length of term is a concern, and then the interest rate that we may or may not charge is a concern.
Correct. And my understanding is that the county is going to charge a 3% interest. Is it on the total or is it each year?
That's a fee for collecting it. So they charge that each year on whatever they don't care what's interest and what's principal. They just charge a fee for collecting it.
Okay, so there's 3% change in the number already, and I think the total annual or the total assessment, my understanding, depending on the years, I mean, that's to dictate how long it is. And then the first question I think we have to discuss on council is that we don't have many of these. So what would be the payback period? Of course, it could be anything you would like, but a normal assessment's either 10 to 20 years, 15 years, something around that amount. So what is everybody's thoughts? And then I'll let the Lindenwood Lake representatives. One second, sir. Does anybody have any comments on that? So we can give a little ideas out there of what
No.
we're thinking? No? Okay,
Mr.
sir.
President.
If you could talk to the microphone right behind you, then we could hear you.
I would just like to say I'd like to just maybe have this delayed for a little bit so we get more information. We have more concrete information too. I got the information yesterday, and you're supposed to vote today, is that correct?
No, we're giving them guidance on what to do today. The letter still has to go out. The bids came in. This has been going on for a while, and as you heard, the engineer's estimate was of $223,000. Did you say, Patrick, or 238? And it came in at 197, which
Yeah.
is great.
Well, I understand that.
And
I'm
then-
just saying that, I got the information yesterday.
Right.
And you are supposed to bid or vote on it today, correct?
No, we're supposed to make a determination of what we'd like to do as far as what the period of assessment would be, how many years. That's the questions being posed to us currently, and whether or not we would charge an interest rate. Now, my opinion with an interest rate is the only interest rate that we would charge is something to keep the time value of money constant over the period of time from year one to year whatever, if it's 20, so the dollars are equal. That's all we really want. That's all I really want to have. I don't think we're trying to make money on this. I don't think that's the goal.
So you're not bidding on awarding the contract to somebody?
No, I don't think we're awarding the contracts today or through this, are we?
Well,
'Cause
that's just what I want to know, that's it.
I guess,
Okay.
Mr. Patton, let me check it out because I'll look at my agenda here.
I think we are doing that.
Yeah. You can't send the letter until.
But why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we, though, award you want to award the contract, right, Patrick?
Eventually, yeah, today would be great. But we did build in, because we knew there would be a period of time that we don't usually have to discuss this. In the bid, we notified all bidders that there would be at least 30 days. There could be 30 days before award. Usually that's only a week or so. So we do have some time to think about it.
Well, the bigger
Sooner the
question is
better.
not on council agenda because we have to approve the assessment to incur. This is just authorizing you to send a letter out to give them parameters, but it's not being voted upon to award anything yet because we have to pass a council resolution to provide the assessment. Correct? And if we
You've,
don't
you've
pass-
already given us. You already passed an ordinance authorizing to bid and award. So Board of Control could award it, but we were asked to bring, before we did that step to bring it here so we can have this discussion.
Right. I got you.
So we can pass it tonight, and then the discussion we're doing is simply about the length of time and the interest, which isn't connected to the. Is the bid you're recommending, is that the lowest bid?
It is, correct.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And then we'll just need to discuss those two. We just need to come to,
Yeah.
those two things.
Thank you, sir. And I think we have a couple more members from the Lindenwood Lake area, the president of the board, correct? That's you. Well, you guys pointed at each other. Wait a minute.
Apparently nobody wants that.
I've been trying to get dethroned for about 20 years, but it hasn't worked yet. Yes, we've had 5 years worth of research and discussion on what's going to be done and put in there. So I think that you're correct here. Really, what we're down to is simply the terms of the financing. So longer for us is obviously better. Those individual owners will have the opportunity to pay their portion up front in cash or have it put on the properties, I understand it, for whatever length we decide here tonight and at whatever rate. So I think the homework has been done and done quite thoroughly. I think the only thing left to be determined is the terms of that assessment.
Thank you. Mr. Durham, there's two ways we could go about this. One is a payment that's equal every year, and then there's a declining balance payment, I guess, as you sent an email out on. Can you explain that?
Right. I mean, I can make an amortization schedule for whatever interest rate you decide, and then that's the question, if you want to amortize it so that the payment is the same every year, or if you want to just leave it so the principal's the same every year and the payment would decline as the balance declined. That's up to you, and a lot of it depends, I guess, on how much interest you're planning on charging, because if you're only charging 1%, there's really not that much difference, versus if you're charging 5%, it's a big deal.
Well, my personal opinion is I'd rather, if I'm paying an assessment, I'd rather have the assessment be the same every year because it's a lot easier to remember than having a change. And plus, if you make it the same every year, it'll equalize it, make the payment lower over the period of years, whatever we decide, rather than just paying it down. Payments, have larger payments at the beginning and shrinking as time goes on. So I think it'd be like a quote unquote mortgage amortization schedule where you principal and interest are paid as a blended between the two, and over the period of time, whatever we decide, the payment amount will be the same, because when they sell the home, what usually happens if there's a sale would be that the assessment will continue to the new owner. My understanding is we're not making them pay it off. We're just the assessment's going to run with the land, so to speak. So when the house is sold, the new owner has to pick up that assessment, unless they negotiate it otherwise.
That's right, but I do believe that they would have, I don't think there's anything that would prevent a property owner from coming into the finance office and writing a check the first day to not have an assessment if they didn't want it.
That would be a great thing, but
well, no, but they might, because the county's going to charge 3% to collect it. So if you're only charging 1 or 2% interest, if you pay it through the property taxes, you're paying that 1 or 2% that the
True.
city charges. Plus, every year you pay a 3%
Right.
fee to the county for collecting it. If you have the money, you might just come in here and write us a check, so you avoid those finance charges.
true, understood. Sir, you have an additional comment?
Well, I was going to say, the reason I was still like a delay is because, as everybody has said here, they've done 5 years of work, which is great. But things have changed. Things have changed, as you know, with the future. There's a lot of uncertainty here. So I think another 30 days is no big deal to just delay what we're doing or what we're talking about today.
Well, I think I totally understand what you're saying, and there is a lot of uncertainty, but the only certainty we know is that the lake's in trouble. And that's why we're here today, is because we have to fix that.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, because our lake is in trouble. But that's all I'm asking for is 30 days. Check it out, see what's going on, and see where we're going. Because, again, everything is uncertain right now. Economically for people, I've talked to a few neighbors who, just don't want to rush into this.
No, we appreciate your comment, but I think some of the issue has to deal with timing of when this will be done and when you engage the contractor to do it, so it's done during a time of year that you can do it. And I think that if you miss the season, then you'll be into another season.
I can see that, but what are we talking about longevity? How long will this take? 2 months?
I'm not sure, Mr. Patton. Do you know the time frame to complete the project? How long is estimated to take?
Yes, I do. The low bidder indicated the completion date would be July 30th of 2020.
Okay, so it'll be a couple months.
So 2 months. So in other words, 30 more days is going to push it back to July, push it back to August. That sounds good to me.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I guess I don't know how other council members feel about it, but I think my bigger concern is trying to figure out what the period of assessment would be and what the interest rate would be.
Well, that's fine on that.
Then they can determine on when you want it to start, I guess. Because when it starts, I mean, it has to be done.
Right. Well, I understand that. What I'm talking about is awarding the contract to one of these people.
Understood what you're saying.
Okay.
Sir?
While he's walking over, John, the other thing we have to be careful of is with the bid, it had the start date and the completion date. Yeah. So we can adversely affect the bid by doing that.
Well,
as
understood. We don't want the bidder to claim foul and then just cancel, and then we're back to
Yes.
square one and get different bids in.
Yes, sir.
I get that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification purposes, as Mr. Gershbacher indicated, we've been working on this for coming up on 5 years now. In December of last year, ODNR, which is also an issue here, was mandated that these repairs be made, and there is a certain urgency related to those with respect specifically to a standpipe that we identified as needing repair 5 years ago. In fact, before ODNR had reported to us that it was a problem. And at that time, we stopped activities in terms of the repair because we became aware of the ODNR requirement that a specific engineering document be completed in order to effect any repairs whatsoever to any of the dam components. And then at that time, we approached the city and this whole process began. So as I said, at the end of last year, the plan was finally approved by ODNR. We communicated that on January 30th of this year to all the members of the Lindenwood, Beechwood, Shorewood Lake Association, complete with all the documentation that had been compiled, including the engineer's cost estimate, all the ODNR approved plans. So this matter has been before the membership with full disclosure as to the specifics of the project and the intent to bid it. Everybody was made aware of the meeting which took place, I think, approximately 6 weeks ago, but I could be a bit wrong on that date, when we met last with the Finance Committee. At that time, the project itself was approved, and as has been stated here, the only open issue in question was that of financing and how an assessment would be levied. Several years ago, we approached all the members and communicated an email with the intent of what we were doing with respect to the cooperation, collaboration, and partnership with the city, and we received overwhelming support by all the members at that time that elected to respond. I don't believe in that particular case Mr. Kryzan had responded, and prior to one of our last in-person meetings, I approached him personally and asked him to please attend the meeting so that he could be aware in the summer of last year what the initial plans looked like for this project, and unfortunately he was not able to attend that meeting. So I think that further delay at this point is imprudent. None of the material facts are going to change. The project came in as substantially less than what we had expected, and we need to move this thing forward. If you stop by today, we had all the trees removed off the dam in preparation for this project. The standpipe that we indicated was deteriorating 5 years ago has deteriorated to the point where 3 or 4 feet of it are now gone. ODNR, again, has mandated that this be done, and in their last report, so 5 years ago was the first time I saw a report from ODNR. And that report gave us 5 years to correct this matter. That's this summer. The 5-year clock is up this summer. Last year, they did another inspection, and as this council is aware, and as the law director pointed out in our last meeting, the clock has run out. They have indicated that no longer do we have a lot of time to address this. They want these issues addressed now, and so the time is now. Thank you.
Thank you. I would propose a couple
President.
things as far as the term is concerned. Oh, Mr. Huber, you have something?
Kathy Patton did pass out some legislation she found when we assessed back in the mid-90s, which I think is the last time we prepared legislation along this line. And I think the term in that ordinance for sidewalk assessments was 15 years, and the interest rate was tied to the bond interest rate, which is actually fairly typical. A good starting point for trying to sort what you're looking at would be that ordinance. I'm not sure if you got a copy of it or not, but it's well within the middle of what is typical on these issues, and from my point of view, the middle is a good place to be.
No, I agree with you, and I would either do a 15 or 20 year, and the difference between the two would be the interest rate. If it's a 15 year, I mean, the longer you go out, the more uncertainty there is, and we have no idea what's going to happen with the CPI, Consumer Price Index, in the future. depending on all the money coming in from the government. I mean, there could be huge inflation. It could be 5%, but it's usually been under 1% for a long period of time. And in order to protect against that, I guess I would do something like 1.25% for 15 years. Or if you go to 20 years, maybe do 1% the first year, 1.5%, and go alternate back and forth for all 20 years. That way, at least it protects the city, though we're still taking a substantial amount of risk of the dollars that we're paying now are not going to be the same value at 15 and 20 years from now. But I don't know any other way to do it. But I want to be fair with it, and I just want to make sure that we don't lose money by doing it. Our job is to do the project and put the money back in the coffers that we spent. Thoughts, Mr. Simpson?
I agree with everything Clint has said. It has to be done. All I'm saying is that things are in a flux right now with the government. They're handing out money like crazy. As far as getting a price, everybody I know is, really sharpening their pencil because of what's going on and not working. I'm sure these people haven't been working as well as they have been. We might be able to get a better price if we wait 30 days. We might even get some more money from the
But we
from the
appreciate
state.
that, but that's a lot of work to rebid it out.
We're
And
not
I
gonna
think
bid it
I think
again.
that's the
To-
issue is that I think we got a number that where everybody's happy with. You may be happy with it, but you're just not happy with the time frame. And I guess we've been dealing with this and
Well, I understand.
I understand your comment, but I'm comfortable moving forward now. I don't know how rest of the council members feels, but I mean, I think we owe it to all the landowners to get this project done. And if we came in this much below the engineer's estimate, it's a pretty good deal. And I understand your comment about the assessment. So your bigger question is, when would the assessment be implemented? And
No,
I guess,
I don't care about that.
well, you kind of do, because if we delay the project,
Yeah,
that
I
dictates
don't-
when the assessment's going to be put on the property. And I assume the assessment can't be put on the property till January, correct? Is that, Keith? When's the first time the assessment can be implemented?
We have to send assessments to the county auditor every fall. I think it's September. So I don't know that this one's going to go this year anyway, because I don't know that everything can be in place by the time we have to do it for this year. So it would either start in 2021 if it could, or 2022 if it couldn't.
So the first time the assessment probably will show up, from what you're telling me, is 2022 on the tax bill.
Right. It might be 2021 because, I mean, if the project's done in July, we might have everything by then.
Okay.
But we always, every year we have to send the assessments to the county auditor it's in the fall. I think it's September.
Understood,
See-
sir.
And see, that's not my point about the assessment.
I know you want to delay it for 30 days, but I don't think anybody on council wants to do that. Does anybody council want to delay it for 30 days?
President?
Mr. Simpson?
The only question I have, which would be for Patrick, if the lowest bidder is coming in with a completion date of July, if we delay this for 30 days, you may be right. Maybe this contractor has nothing else for the rest of the summer, but he may already have some bids out for August and September. Delaying it for another 30 days could impact, we don't know for sure, but could impact the bid that we're receiving now from this company. I
that's a
would be in favor.
possibility.
I would be in favor of not waiting another 30 days if we don't have to.
Well, that's a possibility. You just don't really know. So that was my input. Just, like I say, I got all this information yesterday. 24 hours isn't enough for me to go through the thing and see what's going on with it. That's what I'm saying.
No, we appreciate that.
Okay?
Mr. Rose?
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Patton, has there ever been a situation that you know of that bidders who met the criteria and met the timelines lowered their price if we waited 30 days?
No, that would be unusual.
Okay, and if we wanted to get a lower price, we'd have to rebid the process?
We would, yeah. We can't just ask them for another price. We have to go through the same public bidding process again.
So what we see is what we got.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
sir. Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. President. So just, I'm certainly mindful of Mr. Kryzan's concern with respect to the overall expenditure and the fact that perhaps we could find some additional monies to help defer and offset the cost. And to that end, I think one of the things that we've asked previously and consistently to council along the way with this is that if we're able to find other sources of funding through grants or whatever it might be, that we be in a position to obtain that money and pay down the principal debt on behalf of all of the homeowners and association members so as to defer and reduce the overall burden and have the opportunity either of rescheduling the debt later based upon a reduced principal balance as a result of a lump sum payment against such balance as then was outstanding. So I don't think that passing this tonight precludes us from doing that unless you tell me it does. I believe we still have that opportunity if we're able to find other sources of funding to help pay for the project. So I just want to point that out and make sure that that's also something that can be done, once this is done tonight.
No, thank you, sir. And I think Keith sent out an email earlier about the cost of this, depending on what the amount that is determined. And he said if it was 3%, which is the county's number, and it was amortized over a period of time, it would be about $730 a year for a period of 20 years, if you did it that way. So first of all, how does everybody on council feel between 15 and 20 years of the options I put, or does somebody else have a different option? And then once we determine that, we can ask the Lindenwood Lake people how they feel between the two. I know they want 20 years. That's always better. Longer period of time is better. But the interest may be a little bit higher, but they're still paying the same amount of money in my mind, either it's 15 or 20. It's just the payment will be a little less. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I think 15 or I'd be comfortable with 15 or 20. I mean, you're going to be paying one or the other, and it's not much difference. 15, if I had my choice, I'd pick 15 for us because there is some risk for us too. But I'm comfortable with either one.
I would pick 20.
Mr. President, I'd go with the 20 as well, but I would, considering how the printing presses have been running of late, I would be cautious on going so low as 1%, or I'd look at something around 2% or more.
Well, that's why I did it alternating years, a lower percent one year, a higher percent the next year,
maybe,
which seems the fairest because the CPI has never been that high. That's why I picked the alternating, because it should average out. But you're right, the CPI could jump to 5, and that's just the risk that has to be taken.
And maybe we should look at tying it to the bond rate so we are protected as a city, and protecting our dollars to get back at least current value.
Well, the bond rate is higher than CPI because people invest in the bonds to make money. Our job here is to try to get the project done without.
Well, typically in assessment, it's done exactly the way the ordinance we passed in '96 is done, and frankly, that's standard protocol, and that's what I'm recommending. It's well accepted by the courts.
Well, then the
We're
bigger
not
question is
recreating
Keith, do you know
wheel,
the bond
and,
rate now?
We've got language we can utilize that we've always utilized. We're kind of right in the middle, and that's where I would recommend.
Since we wouldn't actually be issuing a bond for this because it's too small, I would just call an underwriter and get a quote of what we would be looking at on a 20-year bond.
And your guess today would be?
For us, at our credit rating 20, I don't know what it would be today.
I would say it's
mean,
close to 3.
I would say close to 3, but maybe a little under.
What do people think about that? No comments?
I already made my comment. I think it's...
All right. Of course you
well, yeah. Well, yeah, I understand.
The goal would be, as you know, the goal is just to pay back the money that we lend out. And if that's the way down the middle, and I do agree that if it's at 3 today, I can't imagine that the consumer price index is going to remain under 3 for the next 20 years. We've been low for a long time. I think it's going to start jumping up. Years from, 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to be a lot higher. But again, we're not here to make money. We're just here to not lose money. So is everybody okay with Mr. Huber's suggestion of tying it to whatever a 20-year bond would be? Mr. Patton?
I just wanted to, just FYI for council, we are preparing and almost done with the plans for FOHA, that dam project. It's very, very similar to this one, so we're going to be back here in a matter of a month or two. We're kind of setting precedent here, just so you know.
No, that's right. I mean, the goal is to provide the service to the residents. I mean, I think that's our goal. and to do it in a fair way as possible. And 20 years seems very fair. And the interest rate of, if it's the bond, I mean, I don't know what CPI, I was just kind of come up with an answer to try to at least keep us on a regular basis. So technically what we're saying is that there's going to be close to a 6% interest rate on this altogether. Because there's 3% from the county, and there's close to 3 or around 3, it could be less from the city, whatever it is, I don't know what it would be.
And I have to know the years to get this quote. 20?
20 years, I think everybody agrees with 20, yes.
Okay. So
I think we want to do the longest period possible is 20. I don't think we want to go longer than 20 because I think 20 is the maximum that you usually do an assessment for. I've seen them for less, but I think that gives the residents the lowest payment possible over the 20-year period.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yes, sir. You got to go on the mic because nobody can hear you at home.
Just with respect to the 3%, call it a carrying cost or surcharge from the county, that's the first time to my recollection that's come up in any of these discussions. So if you could just give us a little bit more background on that and exactly how that
Durham?
plays.
The county charges a fee to collect an assessment. Where I'm familiar with this is we put unpaid water bills on the tax bills. And when we do that, if you have a water bill that's unpaid, when it goes onto your taxes, if we say, if you owe us $100, we tell the county we want us $100, they charge $103. They pay us the $100. And I was asked to check on the percentage because I didn't know what the percentage was, but I knew they charged a fee, and that's what we got back from the county was that they charged 3%.
But my understanding is, like, say, for example, it was a $750 a year fee or even a $1,000 a year fee. If you pay double that, I mean, you take off those years because you're still paying, you're paying it down, so to speak, right? Or is it just lower your payment if you pay, just like a house payment, if you make an extra payment a year or something? I guess I want to make sure that they understand what they could do to lower their payment and lower their interest rate. Just like a regular home mortgage, that's what I'm thinking, but I'm not sure.
Well, we would, we have to tell the county each year what to collect on assessments. So I suppose if we just, I'm going to have to look into this, but I think if we notified the property owners each year, okay, your $750 assessment is going to go to the county on, and like I said, it's like the second Monday in September. It's by code, the auditor sets that we've got to notify them of the assessment. I'm not positive, but I don't know any reason why we couldn't notify the property owners. We're going to send the assessment to the county on such and such date. If you pay us prior to that date, they could just pay us and have no fee. But I don't know that.
Okay.
You understand what
No, I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to figure ways that
we
they
haven't
could.
done that before. That's why I don't know. But
Right.
because we haven't done any assessments since the 90s, which is long before I was here. So, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know we do with the water bills. When we put those on, per my example, we send a notice out to the property owner. Okay, this $100 is owed. If you don't pay by such and such date, it's going to be put on your property taxes. And then they have the opportunity to pay first. I think we could kind of do the same thing here. It's just a question of who would do the invoicing and keep track
Well, my other
of it.
question was, like, 5 years from now, somebody who comes into some money and wants to make an extra payment, pay a couple $1,000s of it down, if that's possible, or do they have to follow the schedule? I think you can pay an assessment off anytime you want.
I think we could. Yeah, I think we could do that.
Okay.
I don't see why
Okay,
we
so we're agreeable on 20 years, and everybody agreeable to keep checking in on what the 20-year bond rate would be on the issuance of a bond, so we know that number. Then he could submit that email to us and email to the people at Lindenwood, so that they know what's going on, and he can put a schedule. We can know the schedule.
Pat, do you have the addresses to forward to them? Okay.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody good?
And we're going to vote on the, construction.
No, we already voted on that. The last meeting, we voted him to bid it
So
out
it's
and award.
done.
the-
Okay,
where
so
it's
that's
all-
done.
He wanted to
Put on
know
bid.
what the structure of repayment would be.
Okay,
That's already been done.
okay,
He was to bring it back to us before they award it.
okay.
Okay, any other questions on that? Any other question from Lindenwood? Sir, I know your argument. I'm sorry you lost, but that- sometimes it goes. I hear you. Everything has changed. Okay, everybody good with that?
Hold on 1 second.
Yes.
Mr. Huber, if the council tonight accepts the bid, that would avoid us having to go to Board of Control if it went to Finance and Council, correct? council has the authority to accept the bid. We generally don't. You usually
okay.
give us the option of doing it and letting Board of Control. But this, because it was so unusual
I
and we
gotcha.
had not done anything like that,
All
you
right.
ask us to bring it back. So we're going to have to wait 2 weeks to get back to Board of Control, or we could take it to council in
I
2
hear ya.
weeks.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the bid that lowest bidder, Mr. Patton, recommends?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Mr. Durham, if you can give us that information, that'll be great, and then we can share that with the homeowners at Lindenwood. Appreciate that. Thanks for all your work. Another question?
Nope.
No? Okay. We have 2107, purchase of one 2020 F-350 with utility bodies, service body for the water department. Mr. Pacoli?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for a one-ton truck through the CUE program that we have, Community University Education Program. The amount is $44,680.86. It's for the water department. They replace truck 26, as we discussed during the budget process.
Okay. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 2108, exemptions to the zoning code relating to outdoor dining during COVID-19. Mr. Mendel?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is something that the administration had put together to request to assist the restaurants that have been closed up for dine-in for the last 6 weeks. I guess this Thursday or this Friday, they're opening it up for outdoor, and then the state's going to let them on the 21st, I believe, open full indoor not full indoor occupancy at 50% with social distancing and everything. Right now, the zoning code where outdoor dining is permitted, it's a conditionally permitted use in several of the zoning districts. That requires at least a 3-week, application, and then going in front of the planning commission, and then the planning commission makes a decision on it. So it's at least a 3-week process typically. In order to help the restaurants be able to implement outdoor dining as quickly as possible, we are requesting that we have kind of just on an emergency perspective exemption from that conditional zoning approval process through the planning commission. All the normal regulations in the zoning code, and then anywhere else like obstruction of sidewalks or anything like that, it still applies throughout the rest of the municipal code. It's just literally just that procedure process, that procedure to the planning commission, that time frame. It would just be administrative approval through the community development department as the kind of project manager on those. So there's an emergency clause is requested so that it can be taken care of and implemented as soon as possible, because the state's letting restaurants do this this coming Friday. It's also on council agenda for this evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Huber put together some guidelines on that.
Mr. Mendel put together some guidelines, yes, sir.
Mr.
And Mr. Huber is going to review those. But what I do want to advise the council of is when a restaurant opens, they have to identify the liquor permit premise, which generally is the building. If they have an existing patio, it would generally include the patio. But in this case, if they create an outdoor space that was not used for food before, it may not be used for liquor without them filing a new permit with the state, or the state waives that regulation during this time. So what we're asking of you tonight is this is for food and food only. And if somewhere down the line, then the state lifts those regulations and determines if you have an existing liquor permit for indoor and then you're permitted to have outdoor, we'll let that ride along at least during this pandemic.
So,
but I just want to be clear with the council that it doesn't automatically extend their liquor permit premise.
So item A will come out of your recommendation, Jonathan, right? Because it says you can serve alcoholic beverages outdoor. That's one of your parameters.
Item A is may be served in outdoor dining facilities during discrete periods during the weekdays.
Yeah, we
It's
don't want
not
that. Yeah, we don't want that though.
Yeah, but it's just a may. This doesn't exempt.
I think we gotta-
our local code and our process doesn't exempt them under their state liquor license.
Wait, but if we give it if you give it to me as a restaurant and I saw this, I would say right away, I'm going to serve alcohol outside. So I
Well,
think we
we'll be making it explicit to.
Okay, we got to qualify it
Well,
here
them
saying
to say,
only
you
if
know-
you're permitted under your liquor permit.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, nobody's allowed to use sidewalks on here, from what I understand. Sidewalks are prohibited from anybody putting tables in the sidewalk right away.
As we were going through this, the zoning code restrictions are just on private property. It doesn't address ones in public right of way. So then that becomes a question kind of outside of that process. It means it would be something that would just be administratively reviewed and approved potentially as well through police service.
Address that if they're blocking the right of way on a sidewalk. That would be.
Well, the question is,
something
some
we'd
of the
address.
restaurants, at least in the square, other places in the community probably not, but around the square, they may think they're going to put a table out in front of the restaurant on the square. So the question is, do we anticipate that that's a possibility?
Sure, it's probably a possibility, and we'd address it if they did and they blocked the sidewalk right away.
So we have a couple businesses already that have tables and chairs outside on the sidewalk. And we've permitted those, provided there's still enough left sidewalk for pedestrians to go back and forth, not have to go back in the road or anything like that. So I think if under these restrictions, if they put a narrow table and 2 chairs against the building and there was still an adequate enough sidewalk space, we would likely permit that. But we're going to have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, because if they put a table out that instead of being 20 inches or 22 inches is now 4 feet, and it takes 4 feet of the 6-foot sidewalk, obviously that's not going to work.
Well, the other question is, I think we'd have to probably prohibit any kind of sales of alcohol in the public right of way. Only allowed sales
Right.
of alcohol on private
Right.
property, because
Well,
then we weren't.
I'm sorry, sir. The sidewalk's still a public place.
That's correct.
And alcohol is forbidden under state law and municipal code in any public place. So that would surely restrict alcohol.
And I'm just saying that when we hand out this guideline sheet to all the restaurant owners, that we state that in there, because again, if I'm a restaurant owner, what I would do is say, I can't serve alcohol on the front street until I get caught. So I think we got to
Okay.
be clear in that.
Okay.
Mr. President, this is basically just keeping the same. We're going to require the non-residential occupancy permit that we currently have in the community development department. They have to kind of outline a plan of where they want to put it and everything, and then we make sure it can be passed. If they're saying, okay, well, my plan is this part of the sidewalk, okay, well, let's run it through the mayor's office. We're going to run it through police and service. No, it's just on this private parking lot that's adjacent to my building. Okay, well, then we're just going to kind of keep it in building and fire,
I
just
gotcha.
to make sure it's
Okay.
accessible. So there's still a regulatory process. It's just for the time being through the end of the year, this ordinance would allow for the exemption from just the conditional zoning certificate public hearing process in front of planning commission. But you still have to meet all the regulatory process, all the regulatory and approvals procedures that are outlined in the code as well.
And this will terminate how do you determine termination of this right? I mean, when the pandemic's over, what does that mean?
Well, when the state lifts the regulations and the restrictions because of the pandemic, saying that we're on top of this now, or we're going to go back to normal, whatever. So whatever's the earlier of the two. Right now, the state used the 12/1/2020 when they forbid utilities being shut off. So because they picked that date, we thought that was a good end date. So at least we had an end date, or the sooner of which may be if the pandemic restrictions are lifted.
Sure, that sounds good. Any questions on council about this? Yes, Mrs. Hazeltine.
Thank you, John. My question is, who, say they don't go through the proper process and they're like, oh, I'm going to pop a chair out there. Who is the enforcer? They say, oh, I thought I had plenty of room on the sidewalk.
Through a land use process, it'll be the community development
Okay.
department. We'll be the lead on that one, just to make sure, like, hey, there's procedures like we do with people
Yeah.
building fences without
The
permits or
further
sheds. Same
south
thing.
you go,
Yep, we'll be the
it gets much narrower.
enforcement end.
Any other questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause,
Second, including the emergency clause?
And this,
subject to the law director's final approval.
and this will be going straight to council this evening because of the time sensitivity of it, of course.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I think we have time for the executive session. Do we have enough time? I think we do.
15 minutes.
Mr. Huber, we got enough time for the executive session? Yep, okay, we do.
Okay, I will make a motion to go into executive session at 7:15 for three purposes. The first is consider the employment of a public employee or official. Also for preparing, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. And consultation with the law director of the city concerning disputes involving the city that are subject to pending or imminent court action, to include the mayor and the law director.
Is there a second?
Sorry, second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Rose. Heffinger.
Yes.
Simpson. Lamb.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Hazeltine.
Yes.
We'll be
Motion
recessing into executive session to discuss those items mentioned by Mr. Shields, coming out of executive session, taking no action on those items we discussed in executive session, and adjourning from finance and then commencing council. We are in recess.
Where are we going?
We're going to stay here.
We're going to go downstairs.